Welcome to Holy Heartbeats. My name is Nathan, and I narrate Christ-centered testimonies from all over the world. These testimonies include rapture and end-times visions, near-death experiences, encounters with angels and demons, God, Jesus, and even Satan himself. Please consider subscribing to my channel if you are fond of listening to these types of stories, and let me know what you think about these testimonies in the comments section below. Furthermore, for those who want to share their personal testimonies, visions, and revelations from God, you can send us your own stories at holyheartbeat7@gmail.com. I will be very honored to read your testimony, which may inspire, edify, and encourage a lot of people in their personal journey of faith with the Lord Jesus Christ. The Rothschilds' Bloodline, Part 3. Lenin and the establishment of a central bank. Lenin asserted that the establishment of a central bank was 90% of communizing a nation. Both Lenin and Trotsky were reportedly required to place MI6 operatives in key positions during the Russian Revolution. These operatives, in turn, were controlled by the satanic elite based in London, England. It is widely recognized that the Rothschilds have played a major role among international bankers. Individuals such as Lord Victor Rothschild have been significant figures in MI6. These points underscore an apparent conclusion. The Rothschilds are influential players in global control and the New World Order. The Rothschilds and controlled media. Despite the efforts of controlled news media to shield the Rothschilds, some information continues to surface. My investigation into the Rothschild family and their activities is ongoing, and I have encountered a few descendants willing to expose their practices. One notable figure I have yet to interview is the husband of Rebecca Brown. Reports suggest that Rebecca Brown's husband is an ex-Illuminatus of the Rothschild bloodline who escaped their grasp and has since attempted to reveal their satanic practices. Allegedly, the Rothschilds sought to harm him severely, but he has been called by God to strengthen the end-time church. Peter Rupert. Lord Carrington, chairman of the Bilderbergers, has served as the Rothschilds' director of Rio Tinto Zinc Corporation. He is also a director of Barclays Bank and a member of the Trilateral Commission. Similarly, François Mitterrand, a former leader of France, maintained close ties with the Rothschilds. These associations illustrate the extensive influence the Rothschilds wield behind the scenes. What they call their bloodline in the Illuminati. During Illuminati ceremonies, candidates at the Sisters of Light and Mothers of Darkness levels refer to the Rothschild lineage explicitly as the Rothschild bloodline. Although the family's original name was Bauer, and many descendants today are still known as Bowers or Bowers, the name Rothschild was chosen as an occult designation for their bloodline. Power brokers in Latin America. A South American acquaintance of mine witnessed firsthand the devastation wrought by Rothschild interests in the region. In 1908, Bolivia stood out as a nation free of foreign debt. However, American financiers such as the Morgans began lending money to Bolivia, followed by loans from Chandler and Comers in 1917, amounting to $2.4 million. These developments initiated Bolivia's descent into economic enslavement under the Illuminati's international bankers. Nations like Bolivia, if left to their own devices, would have fared far better. However, external forces like the Rothschilds often intervene, subsequently directing institutions like the IMF to rescue these nations. The Rothschilds established themselves in Brazil during the 19th century, where they played a substantial role in the railway system's development, a system that became a law unto itself. Later, figures such as Henry Kaiser and Nelson Rockefeller expanded their capitalist agendas into South America, including Brazil. During the 1950s and 1960s, they promoted light industrialization and economic interdependence in the region. The Scroll and Key Society and Latin American connections. The Scroll and Key Society is one of the Illuminati's secret entry points at Yale University. This society financed a book by Elizabeth A. Cobbs titled The Rich Neighbor Policy, Rockefeller and Kaiser in Brazil. The book states that Brazilians have historically viewed Rockefeller as their primary connection to the United States. Beyond the Rothschilds, other elite families, such as the DuPonts, have also maintained substantial economic control in Latin America. The bloodlines are secret. One key point to remember is that the true occult power of the Rothschild bloodline lies in hidden and secret lineages. While the Rothschild family itself is part of this bloodline, other associated surnames such as Bauer, Bowers, and Sassoons also carry this legacy. Members of the Illuminati who possess Rothschild blood are aware of their secret ancestry, but outsiders are rarely, if ever, informed of the powerful occult lineage they might carry. The story of BankCal, California's oldest bank, illustrates the extraordinary influence of the Rothschilds in the United States. The Securities Exchange Commission, SEC, was established to protect the American public from stock fraud. However, during the 1980s, 3 high-profile fraud cases uncovered by the SEC gave the impression that stock market trading was generally conducted honestly. The BankCal episode, involving Edmund Rothschild, full name Edmund Adolphe Jules Jacques Maurice Baron de Rothschild, shattered this illusion, revealing that figures like the Rothschilds operate beyond the reach of the law. In 1973, BankCal's CEO, de Bretteville, sold Edmund Rothschild 300,000 shares of Bancal Tri-State Corporation, which held 22% of Bank of California. De Bretteville initially approached 2 English Rothschild cousins, who then contacted their French cousins. These French relatives reached out to Edmund in Geneva, Switzerland. Edmund assured them he would assist with the purchase and later divide the shares among them. However, he reneged on this promise, retaining the shares for himself. Over the following years, Edmund lied to numerous individuals about his intentions for the bank. De Bretteville lamented, "He lied to his family, and he lied to me. It was a dirty deal all around." The Bank of California, a unique institution with franchises across the Pacific Rim states of Oregon, Washington, and California, became merely another asset in Edmund Rothschild's collection. A plaything of the elite. Edmund Rothschild's acquisitions extended far beyond BankCal. He already owned companies in Brazil, toy companies, a 10% stake in De Beers Mining in South Africa, joint business ventures with Robert Vesco, and 30% of Club Mediterranee, which he co-founded. Club Mediterranee was inspired by the elite seaside retreats where Edmund and his mother spent his childhood. Edmund initially intended to gift the Bank of California to his only son, Benjamin, nicknamed Benji, as a graduation present. However, Benjamin, who attended Pepperdine University, was more interested in partying than academics. Living extravagantly in a luxurious beach house, he left Pepperdine after 4 years with only 31 credits, 97 short of graduation. He returned to Chateau Prégny, the family estate on the shores of Lake Geneva in Switzerland. It was not until 1989 that Benjamin ventured into the financial world, launching La Compagnie de Trésorerie Benjamin de Rothschild. The San Jose Mercury News reported that BankCal became a personal plaything for Edmund Rothschild. Regulators encouraged Rothschild to take charge, and securities investigators turned a blind eye to suspicious overseas trading. Even the bank's directors deferred to the Baron. Bill Miles, a former BankCal vice president, remarked, "This is not what made this country great. This is greed, all the way through." Although Edmund Rothschild purchased only a minority of BankCal's shares, he was able to exert total control over the institution. He manipulated stock prices and engaged in insider trading without facing scrutiny from the SEC. Edmund appointed 2 representatives to BankCal's board of directors. The first, George Coulon-Carlweiss, was a Swiss banker who worked for Edmund. The second, George Shapiro, was a New York lawyer with no banking experience. Edmund referred to Shapiro as his godfather and guardian angel. Manipulation at BankCal. After purchasing shares of BankCal, Edmund Rothschild replaced de Bretteville as CEO with his own appointee, Chauncey Schmidt. This move directly violated Edmund's agreement to retain de Bretteville as a condition for purchasing the bank's shares. However, Edmund disregarded the agreement without hesitation. Board meetings devolved into mere exercises in deciphering what does Edmund think, while Edmund himself cultivated favor with San Francisco's high society by hosting extravagant parties. Edmund orchestrated a series of calculated actions that drastically devalued BankCal's stock. Financial advisors and securities analysts convinced smaller shareholders to sell their stock at rock-bottom prices, some as low as $16 per share. Edmund, along with his secret proxies, discreetly acquired these shares. Much of the stock was funneled through anonymous investors using private banks in secrecy-protected jurisdictions such as Switzerland, the Netherlands, Germany, and Luxembourg. By misleading the public and regulators, Edmund ensured nearly 20% of the bank's stock was sold to secret European bank accounts. From 1979 to 1981, over 15% of the bank's shares changed hands in Europe, an unusual trading pattern that should have alerted the Securities and Exchange Commission. Yet, the SEC ignored the evident insider trading. Edmund publicly claimed that the bank was not for sale, while secretly engaging in negotiations with elite figures like David Rockefeller and Gaith Farion. Meanwhile, Jean-Marc Vernis, a close associate of Edmund, anonymously purchased 310,000 shares through a defunct Asian mining company. His identity remained hidden until Edmund nominated him to the bank's board of directors. After stock prices were driven to their lowest levels and a significant portion of shares were acquired in secret, Edmund announced a sudden change of heart and decided to sell the bank at $50 per share. He ultimately sold BankCal to the Japanese conglomerate Mitsubishi, codenamed Snoopy, during the secret negotiations. The sale, finalized in March 1982, netted Edmund a substantial profit. For years, shareholders had seen offers as high as $74 per share from various companies, only to have those offers rejected. It became clear that Edmund's goal was to exploit stockholders and secure a hefty financial reward for himself. Richard Freeman, a significant shareholder, sued Edmund Rothschild and the bank's directors, accusing them of stock manipulation and deception. The $25 million lawsuit was settled out of court under terms that required all parties to maintain strict confidentiality. The Round Table Group. David Smith, who contributed an article on the Rothschilds for this newsletter, requested an introduction explaining their connection to the Round Table Group. The Round Table, a secret society formed by Cecil Rhodes and William T. Stead, included a circle of initiates, featuring notable names like Albert, Lord Grey, Arthur Lord Balfour, Sir Harry Johnston, and Lord Rothschild. Alfred Milner, another key figure, served on the executive committee of this society. Carroll Quigley dates the formation of the group to March 1891. The Rothschilds are believed to have helped finance this secretive organization. Between 1909 and 1913, the group established round table branches in British territories and the United States. These groups remained active into the 1970s, supported in part by Sir Abe Bailey, who financed the group's quarterly publication, The Round Table. In 1919, Sir Abe Bailey and the Astor family funded the creation of the Royal Institute of International Affairs, RIIA, also known as Chatham House. The RIIA subsequently established affiliated organizations, such as the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, in the United States. Early round table meetings, often held at the Astor family's Cliveden estate, earned the group the nickname the Cliveden Set. Alfred Milner, a central figure, had a particularly close relationship with the Rothschilds. He frequently visited their estates, stayed overnight with members of the family, and served as a director of Rothschild-owned enterprises such as Rio Tinto. Terence O'Brien's biography highlights Milner's significant involvement with the Rothschilds. 3 Illuminati families were instrumental in creating the Round Table groups, which eventually evolved into powerful organizations like the RIIA and the CFR. The Rothschilds, Astors, and Greys. The Rothschilds, Astors, and Greys are prominent among the families that shaped powerful generational satanic lineages. The Bailey family also emerges as a key player in this lineage. Organizations such as the Royal Institute of International Affairs, RIIA, and its numerous branches, including the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, remain highly influential today. In my book, Be Wise as Serpents, readers can explore a detailed chart that highlights the pivotal role the CFR plays in shaping the policy process of the United States. The Rothschild family reached the pinnacle of its influence during the age of Metternich, from 1814 to 1848. However, as the 19th century progressed, their dominance began to wane. While their influence remained considerable, their veto power had diminished in the aftermath of the revolutionary changes in Europe. Nonetheless, this decline was not irreversible. The latter half of the century saw the family orchestrating a remarkable resurgence. This resurgence unfolded under the leadership of the New Trinity: Alphonse in France, Lionel in England, and Anselm in Vienna. These figures laid the groundwork for a reorganization of the family's structure and influence. A notable example of their restored power was their relationship with the Habsburgs, a prominent Illuminati-linked dynasty. Despite stringent aristocratic rules requiring 4 ancestral lines of nobility and baptism to be court-worthy, Emperor Francis Joseph granted the Rothschilds a special act of grace in 1887, allowing them to form close ties with the imperial family. Although the emperor himself maintained a formal distance, his wife maintained a warm relationship with the Rothschilds. Another instance of their influence was their involvement on both sides of the Austro-Prussian and Franco-Prussian wars. Otto von Bismarck, Prussia's dictator, was deeply connected to the Rothschilds, particularly Amschel of Frankfurt, whom Bismarck considered a father figure. After Amschel's death, Bismarck continued his close association with the family, relying on their agent, Bleichroeder, the wealthiest man in Berlin, as his banker. Bleichroeder financed Bismarck's wars with Austria and France. In Austria, members of the Rothschild family, including Alphonse and Anthony of Paris and Anselm of Vienna, publicly urged the Habsburgs to avoid war with Bismarck. Despite this, Austria was drawn into conflict with Prussia in 1866. The Rothschilds, ostensibly proponents of peace, had reportedly convened in London the year before under the pretense of attending a family wedding, possibly to devise a strategy regarding the impending war. Predictably, Prussia swiftly defeated Austria in just 7 weeks, a war largely financed by Bleichroeder. The Rothschilds' influence extended further during the Franco-Prussian War. Napoleon III, the French emperor, was closely tied to Alphonse de Rothschild of the Paris house, with whom he even shared a mistress. Alphonse simultaneously maintained ties with Bismarck, strategically positioning the Rothschilds on both sides of the conflict. When Bismarck provoked France by attempting to place a German prince on the Spanish throne, Napoleon III sought Alphonse's assistance in conveying a diplomatic ultimatum to England. Alphonse obliged, using the Rothschild courier system to send the message to Nathaniel de Rothschild at New Court in London. Nathaniel, in turn, passed the message to his friend and former Prime Minister William Gladstone. At the time, England lacked an active prime minister, and Gladstone's refusal to mediate effectively set the stage for war. Although Bismarck withdrew his candidate for the Spanish throne, tensions between France and Prussia remained irreconcilable. In 1870, Napoleon III declared war on Prussia, igniting a conflict that most observers believed would end in France's favor. A biographer later remarked, "No one foresaw the fall of France." Indeed, crowned heads and statesmen alike believed that, at long last, Bismarck had taken on an impossible task. Despite widespread confidence in France's success, Alphonse de Rothschild sent his family to England, seemingly aware of the impending disaster. Napoleon III suffered a devastating defeat, leading to the collapse of his empire. This war, like others, was financed by the Rothschild agent Bleichroeder. A puzzling contradiction emerges from this episode. Biographers, drawing on diaries and other sources, suggest that the Rothschilds were distressed by Napoleon III's defeat. However, evidence indicates they orchestrated much of the conflict. This apparent contradiction raises questions. Was their dismay genuine, possibly due to the uncertainty brought on by revolutionary upheaval? Or was it merely a strategic act of disinformation? Perhaps their real objective was to maintain influence on both sides of the conflict, weathering the storm despite their philosophical alignment with France, a claim many find dubious. The family had significant involvement on both sides, and it even seems they manufactured the conflict. The outcome, therefore, should not have surprised them. Personally, I believe the House of Rothschild sought the downfall of Napoleon III and his empire. In the aftermath, the French Third Republic was established. Following the war, France's economy was in ruins. Junius Morgan, another Rothschild agent, was brought in to help stabilize and rebuild the financial system, earning substantial profits in the process. The Rothschilds' involvement in both the Austro-Prussian and Franco-Prussian wars was pivotal, despite their public proclamations advocating peace. The French house in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Alphonse de Rothschild, part of the New Trinity, became the fourth head of the House of Rothschild. A cultured aristocrat, he maintained friendships with many prominent leaders of his era, including Belgium's King Leopold and England's Prince of Wales. Known for his lavish lifestyle, he and his wife were celebrated as the most extravagant entertainers of their day. Alphonse was also known for his affairs, most famously with the Comtesse de Castiglione. He enhanced the Rothschild network of agents, an underground system that continued to thrive long after his death. Alphonse's older sister, Charlotte, married Nathaniel of the English house. His brother Gustave also had an affair with the Comtesse de Castiglione. His youngest brother Edmund was a visionary instrumental in the creation of a Jewish homeland in Israel. Edmund also played a key role in dividing the global oil market between Shell and Rockefeller's Standard Oil. Another brother, Salomon James, became the subject of a peculiar story recounted by biographer Virginia Cowles. Salomon, a compulsive gambler, suffered a fatal heart attack, reportedly triggered by the excitement of trading on the stock exchange. Yet, 3 years earlier, Salomon had also died of a heart attack. Following Jewish custom, his body was placed in a coffin and carried through every room of the house. When one of the pallbearers stumbled, the coffin hit a door, and Salomon miraculously awoke. He lived another 3 years before his final passing. The French house bank, de Rothschild Frères, wielded considerable power, investing in industries such as electricity, the Mediterranean Railway, and North African ventures. The French house, in collaboration with the British house, controlled the Baku oil fields in Russia, making the Rothschilds key competitors of the Rockefeller Trust. Edmund primarily managed the oil business. When Alphonse died in 1905, the leadership of the French house passed to Baron Edouard, a reserved but immensely wealthy man who also served as a director of the Bank of France. Alongside his cousin Robert, the son of Gustave, Edouard navigated de Rothschild Frères through the turbulence of World War I. Their conservative financial strategies were aimed at safeguarding family wealth. Baron Edouard and Robert maintained close business ties with J.P. Morgan. One notable collaboration involved financial maneuvers that helped the Austrian Rothschilds recover much of the wealth they had lost during World War I. Edmund's son, James Armand de Rothschild, carried forward his father's work in establishing a Jewish homeland after Edmund's death in 1934. However, James's brother Maurice became known as the Black Sheep of the French Rothschild family's new generation. Maurice de Rothschild, scandalous aristocrat. Maurice de Rothschild was both a banker and a senator in the French Parliament, renowned for his notoriety in aristocratic circles. Dubbed Don Juan de Rothschild, he became infamous for his scandalous escapades. A biographer once remarked, "Some people went as far as to claim that one had to be seduced, or at least pinched by Baron Maurice if one was a woman, or affronted by Baron Maurice if a man. No other personage surpassed him in enriching the delicious scandal of his times." Thus, the French Rothschilds entered the 20th century under the leadership of the undynamic Baron Edouard, with Maurice serving as one of the most colorful figures of his generation. The British house in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Lionel de Rothschild, a member of the New Trinity, led the British house into the late 19th century with great success. Lionel was a formidable figure who managed Newcourt with exceptional skill. He financed many high-profile ventures, including Cecil Rhodes's gold and diamond mines and the purchase of the Suez Canal. Notably, Lionel became the first Jewish member of the British Parliament. Lionel's sister, Charlotte, married Anselm of Vienna, another member of the New Trinity, while another sister married into the soon-to-be extinct Italian House of Rothschild. Among Lionel's brothers, Anthony stood out for describing the Rothschilds as complete slaves to business. Anthony married into the Montefiore family and was later knighted, becoming Sir Anthony de Rothschild. Another brother, Nathaniel, was the founder of the Mouton Rothschilds. Though part of the British House, Nathaniel moved to Paris in 1851, and 2 years later, he purchased vineyards that became known as Mouton Rothschild. His descendants, although citizens of France, retained their identity as members of the British House. Baron Mayer de Rothschild, another brother, married into the Cohen family and constructed the magnificent Mentmore Towers, described by one admirer as surpassing the grandeur of the Medicis at the height of their glory. Mentmore Towers passed to Mayer's daughter, Hannah, after his death. In 1878, Hannah married the Earl of Rosebery, who would later serve as Prime Minister of England from 1894 to 1895. The estate remains in the possession of their descendants. Baron Mayer was a member of Parliament who never delivered a speech and had a passion for horse breeding and racing, earning him the title of the family's sporting member. When Lionel died in 1879, a new generation of British Rothschilds rose to prominence, led by Lionel's aristocratic son, Nathaniel Natty de Rothschild. Natty assumed control of Newcourt, the British Rothschild Bank. He was elected to the House of Commons in 1865 and elevated to the House of Lords in 1885 when Queen Victoria made him the first Lord Rothschild. Natty, a sharp contrast to his father Lionel and his uncle Mayer, was known for his eloquent speeches and commanding presence. One biographer described him as exclusive, lofty, humorless, one of the 3 rudest men in England, selective, blunt, aloof, powerful, and a man with an explosive temper, a perfect representative of the ruling class. Although he lacked the brilliance of his grandfather Nathan, the second head of the Rothschild dynasty, Natty's strong personality and refusal to be contradicted earned him respect and influence. Lord Natty was close friends with Prime Ministers Benjamin Disraeli and William Gladstone and was known for his philanthropy, particularly toward Jewish causes. He was affectionately referred to as the King of the Jews, a title shared by other prominent Rothschilds. He also chaired the British Red Cross and garnered the loyalty of London's police force by presenting them with generous annual gifts and offering free meals at his home, ensuring that Rothschild carriages always had the right of way in traffic. In business, Lord Natty was extremely conservative. He avoided high-risk ventures and prioritized safeguarding family wealth. He famously remarked to writer Frank Harris, "I go to the bank Newcourt every morning, and when I say no, I return home at night without a worry. But when I say yes, it's like putting your finger into a machine. The whirring wheels may drag your whole body in after the finger." Under Natty's leadership, Newcourt expanded its operations globally. The bank controlled the lucrative ruby mines in Burma and dominated financial markets across South America, with Brazil as its exclusive preserve. Argentina, by contrast, was under the influence of the Barings, another major London banking family. Lord Natty's brothers, Alfred and Leo, assisted in managing Newcourt, but left most decisions to Natty. Natty stood for finance, Alfred for the arts, Leo for sport, it was said. Alfred, in particular, was an eccentric figure. He maintained a zebra-drawn carriage, a pet goat, a private philharmonic orchestra, and even a circus where he served as ringmaster. The Rothschilds were deeply intertwined with British royalty. Natty and his brothers formed close ties with the Prince of Wales, Albert Edward, later King Edward VII. This circle of friends, known as the Marlborough Boys, often gathered at the Prince's residence, Marlborough House, for lively social events where wit took precedence over formality. The Prince reportedly helped secure Natty's peerage, and the Rothschilds, in turn, financed some of the Prince's ventures and debts. Alfred de Rothschild and the British House, Alfred de Rothschild, a member of the British Rothschild family, played a significant role in both business and diplomacy. He worked at New Court and was the first Jewish director of the Bank of England. Alfred's influence extended beyond finance. He participated in the final rites for Benjamin Disraeli, an event shrouded in intrigue, as some speculated that Queen Victoria may have had a romantic affair with Disraeli, possibly concealed by the Rothschilds. Known for his diplomatic demeanor, Alfred had a keen interest in foreign affairs and was instrumental in easing tensions between England and Germany around the turn of the century. For the Rothschilds, war was not beneficial, and Alfred's efforts reflected this pragmatic stance. Breaking with tradition, Alfred left his immense wealth to his daughter in his will. She used part of this fortune to fund the expedition that ultimately discovered Tutankhamun's tomb in Egypt, a significant moment in archaeology. Lord Natty's other brother, Baron Leopold de Rothschild, was less interested in business. Instead, he was passionate about horse racing and automobiles, earning a reputation as a kind and approachable man. Leopold's wife, Maria Perugia, was the sister of Mrs. Arthur Sassoon, further intertwining the Rothschild family with prominent social circles. The British House of Rothschild endured financial challenges during the First World War, though some speculated their wealth simply moved out of public view. Regardless, the family's public presence quickly rebounded. The 20th century began with lofty Lord Natty leading a new era for the British Rothschilds. The Austrian House, late 19th and early 20th century. Baron Anselm von Rothschild, another member of the New Trinity, ushered the Austrian house into the late 19th century. Though initially living under the shadow of his father, Salomon, and his uncle Amschel, Anselm proved his own merit. His most notable accomplishment was the establishment of Creditanstalt, which eliminated the Rothschilds' main financial rival, Crédit Mobilier. As a young man, Anselm was wild and frivolous, prompting his father to send him to apprentice under his uncle Amschel at the family's Frankfurt bank. His time there transformed him, and he remained in Frankfurt for 30 years. After his father's death in 1855, Anselm returned to Vienna to assume his father's role, becoming a highly active businessman and gaining influence in the Habsburg court. Anselm's name was recorded in Vienna's Golden Book, and he was inducted into the Imperial House of Lords in 1861. However, he was not without enemies. When an Austrian club denied him membership because of his Jewish heritage, Anselm retaliated by installing a sewage disposal unit near the club. When the club later offered him membership, he returned the card doused in perfume, refusing their gesture and leaving the sewage unit in place. The Austrian House, under Anselm's leadership, triggered Vienna's financial crisis of 1873. The Rothschild Bank, SM Rothschild und Söhne, dominated Hungarian finance, while Creditanstalt became a financial powerhouse in the Habsburg Empire. After Anselm's death in 1874, his children carried on the family's legacy. His eldest son, Nathaniel, was more interested in art and history than banking. His second son, Ferdinand, moved to England and became a naturalized citizen. Anselm's youngest son, Baron Albert von Rothschild, had a strong business acumen and succeeded him at Creditanstalt. Albert and Nathaniel were the wealthiest men in Austria. Albert controlled diverse industries, from coal to railways, and his management of Hungary's 6% gold loan in 1881 established the Rothschild Bank as the empire's leading financial institution. Albert, however, was wary of the public, building a fortified mansion with walls 7 feet high, topped by 8 feet of iron fencing. Baron Ferdinand, Anselm's second son, became part of Prince Edward's Marlborough Boys in England. Known affectionately as Ferdy, he was an intellectual and socialite. He built the opulent Waddesdon Manor, a Rothschild estate so magnificent that Queen Victoria herself visited. Its grand halls hosted notable figures, including the Empress Frederick and the Shah of Persia. Ferdinand also maintained a zoo on the property. Alice, one of Anselm's daughters, also moved to England. An unmarried and strong-willed woman, Alice was known for her authoritarian personality. She once reprimanded Queen Victoria for accidentally trampling a flower bed. Despite this incident, the Queen remained fond of her, nicknaming her the All-Powerful. A cousin once wrote, "Alice reigns absolutely. There is nothing constitutional about this monarchy." Upon Ferdinand's death, Alice inherited Waddesdon Manor. The Austrian house's leadership transitioned to Baron Albert after Anselm's passing. Albert's son, Baron Louis, succeeded him after his death in 1911. Louis and his brothers, Alphonse and Eugene, were gentlemen of leisure. The three brothers served in the Austrian army during World War I, a conflict that reportedly separated the Austrian house from its French and British counterparts, although this claim is debatable. During the war, much of the Austrian house's wealth went underground. After the war, the French and British Rothschilds helped the Austrian house recover. Thus, a new era began for the Austrian Rothschilds in the 20th century, with powerful Albert and suave Baron Louis leading the way. The Morgan Connection. George Peabody and the Foundations of American Banking Power. George Peabody, a Massachusetts trader, established a banking house, George Peabody and Cober, in London in 1837. He became renowned as a financial ambassador in London. Historian Carroll Quigley attributed the use of tax-exempt foundations to manipulate society to Peabody, citing the establishment of the Peabody Foundation. Daniel Colt Gilman, a member of the Skull and Bones Society and the first president of the Carnegie Institution, was also involved in founding the Peabody Foundation. Such was Peabody's stature among the elite that a statue of him was erected across from the Bank of England. As Peabody aged, he sought a younger partner to carry on his work. Junius Morgan of Hartford, Connecticut, was recommended to him. In 1854, Junius and his family moved to London, where he joined George Peabody and Co. During the American Civil War, Peabody and Morgan raised loans for the North, though Junius was said to have also supplied resources to the South. When Peabody retired in 1864, Junius took over the business, renaming it J.S. Morgan & Co. That same year, Junius's son, J.P. Morgan, became a junior partner in the firm. By the following year, J.P. had moved to New York to represent the firm in the United States. After the Franco-Prussian War, Junius Morgan was instrumental in restoring France's economy. Around this time, his bank was considered a potential rival to the Rothschilds' new court. However, Junius was aligned with the Rothschilds, and his success contributed to their prosperity. J.S. Morgan & Co. became one of the Rothschilds' most influential tools in the United States. In 1869, J.P. Morgan traveled to London to meet with the Rothschilds, where plans were laid to form Northern Securities, a company that would act as New Court's agent in the United States, with J.P. serving as their proxy. In 1871, J.P. partnered with Anthony Drexel, heir to a powerful Philadelphia banking family, to create Drexel, Morgan & Compter. Their firm occupied a grand building on Wall Street, which remains the Morgan headquarters. After the Civil War, European confidence in the U.S. economy increased, leading to a flood of capital across the Atlantic. The firm profited immensely, financing the growing number of industrial projects in America, cementing the House of Morgan as a major financial powerhouse. J.P. Morgan and the rise of American finance. Junius Morgan retired in 1879, leaving J.P. Morgan in charge of J.S. Morgan & Co., which he reorganized as J.P. Morgan & Co. Under his leadership, Morgan became a symbol of the growing centralization of American finance. His approach to business, often called Morganization, created monopolistic cartels and consolidated industries. By 1896, the prominent Illuminati families Payne, Whitney, and Vanderbilt had invested in Morgan Guarantee Company, which was managed by J.P. Morgan and the Guggenheim outfits. At one point, Morgan controlled nearly half of the American railroad system. In 1901, he raised an unprecedented $1.4 billion to establish United States Steel Corporation, based on Andrew Carnegie's Pittsburgh steel mills. J.P. Morgan frequently orchestrated financial syndicates for the Illuminati to advance the Great Plan. When President William McKinley began prosecuting the Rothschild-affiliated Northern Securities under antitrust laws in 1900, J.P. Morgan was implicated. However, McKinley's assassination in 1901, shortly after appointing Theodore Roosevelt, a known Illuminatus, as vice president, halted the prosecution. Many speculated that McKinley's death was orchestrated by J.P. Morgan and the Rothschilds. During Roosevelt's presidency, Morgan's influence grew. He organized a syndicate with Rothschild agent August Belmont Jr. to bail out the U.S. Treasury during a depletion crisis. The syndicate raised $65 million in gold, which was repaid through the issuance of bonds. Although Morgan faced criticism for the deal's strict terms, his power remained unchallenged. In 1907, Morgan spent 5 months traveling between London and Paris, presumably consulting with the Rothschild houses. Upon his return to America, rumors began circulating about the insolvency of the Knickerbocker Bank, triggering a banking panic. The mass withdrawal of deposits caused a domino effect, culminating in the Panic of 1907. Morgan took charge of the banking community's response to the crisis, consolidating his dominance over rival banks. The incident strengthened calls for a central bank, a goal supported by the elite. Historian Frederick Lewis Allen later reflected, "Certain chroniclers have arrived at the ingenious conclusion that the Morgan interests took advantage of the unsettled conditions during the autumn of 1907 to precipitate the panic, guiding it shrewdly as it progressed, so that it would kill off rival banks and consolidate the preeminence of the banks within the Morgan orbit." The Panic of 1907 and the birth of the Federal Reserve. The Panic of 1907 heightened public demand for a powerful central bank that could protect the common man from the abuses of Wall Street bankers. This widespread sentiment ultimately paved the way for the creation of the Federal Reserve. Among those involved with the Morgan Financial Group was Harold Stanley, a member of the Skull and Bones Society. After J.P. Morgan's death, the firm was reorganized as Morgan Stanley and J.P. Morgan passed away in 1913. His son, J.P. Morgan Jr., a Harvard graduate, assumed leadership of the firm. Most conspiratorial writers often fail to distinguish between the father and son. Like his predecessor, J.P. Morgan Jr. was an ambitious and influential international banker. He became well known for his orchestration of massive foreign loans and for continuing the House of Morgan's collaboration with the Rothschilds. The Schiff connection. The Schiff family, intertwined with the Rothschilds through shared residency in Frankfurt, became prominent Rothschild agents. Over time, they amassed great wealth and influence, a hallmark of many Rothschild affiliates. The most notable member of the Schiff family was Jacob Henry Schiff. Born in Frankfurt in 1847, Jacob Schiff was dispatched by the Rothschild Schiff network to America to establish his fortune, much like John Jacob Astor before him. Schiff arrived in New York in 1865 and, within a decade, became a partner at the Illuminati-connected firm Kuhn, Loeb & Company. Another decade later, he ascended to its presidency, where he managed Rothschild and Illuminati affairs from a position of immense authority. Schiff also served on the boards of Central Trust Company, Western Union, and Wells Fargo Company. Like many elites, he donated substantial sums to charitable causes, a practice that often served to enhance his influence and reputation within the ruling class. Jekyll Island and the creation of the Federal Reserve. The Illuminati had long sought to establish a central bank in the United States, culminating in the creation of the Federal Reserve. To achieve this, they orchestrated a series of banking crises to sway public opinion toward the need for such an institution. One pivotal event was the Knickerbocker Panic of 1907, engineered by J.P. Morgan. The second requirement was securing a favorable U.S. president. This goal was realized when Rothschild agent Colonel House facilitated the election of Woodrow Wilson. To give the effort a veneer of legitimacy, Congress created the National Monetary Commission, appointing Nelson Aldrich, a Rockefeller relative, as its head. For 2 years, the commission traveled through Europe, consulting with Illuminati leaders and receiving instructions on the framework for the central bank. In 1910, Aldrich convened a secret meeting at the Jekyll Island Hunt Club in Georgia to draft the Federal Reserve legislation. Attendees included A. Piatt Andrew, Frank Vanderlip, of Kuhn, Loeb & Company, Henry Davidson, of J.P. Morgan, Charles Norton, of a Morgan-affiliated bank, Paul Warburg, of Kuhn, Loeb & Company, and Jacob Schiff's brother-in-law, and Benjamin Strong, associated with a Morgan company. Most of these men were directly connected to either Jacob Schiff or J.P. Morgan Jr., who were themselves agents of the Rothschilds. The Jekyll Island Hunt Club was even owned by J.P. Morgan. The Federal Reserve Bill was stealthily passed through Congress in late 1913, and President Woodrow Wilson signed it into law. This act transferred significant financial power in the United States to the Illuminati, particularly the Rockefeller and Rothschild families. The first governor of the New York branch of the Federal Reserve was Benjamin Strong, while Paul Warburg became the first governor of the Federal Reserve Board. Both men were intimately tied to Schiff, Morgan Jr., and the Rothschild dynasty. The Federal Reserve and the Great Depression. The Federal Reserve became a potent instrument of Illuminati and Rothschild influence. It played a key role in orchestrating major economic crises, including the Great Depression. J.P. Morgan Jr. was heavily implicated in the creation of this economic catastrophe, which served to consolidate financial power within the United States under the Rothschild-Morgan alliance. According to Congressman Louis McFadden, the Depression allowed the Rothschild-backed First National Bank Group, controlled by J.P. Morgan, and Kuhn, Loeb-run National City Bank, linked to Jacob Schiff, to tighten their grip on the U.S. economy. The Depression also paved the way for Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal, further entrenching elite influence over American policy and finance. Rothschild connections to the First World War. The Rothschild connections to the First World War provide a prime example of orchestrated conflict. On the Allied side, the British and French branches of the Rothschild family provided substantial financial support to their respective nations. Some members of the Rothschild family even served as soldiers, although their direct involvement in combat was minimal. J.P. Morgan and Co. played a pivotal role by acting as the Allies' purchasing agent until the United States formally entered the war. Additionally, the firm established a syndicate to finance modernization efforts in China, purportedly to counter Japanese aggression. The elite were eager to draw the United States into the war. Historian Charles Tansill observed that large banking interests were deeply invested in the World War due to the vast opportunities for profit. On August 3, 1914, even before the war officially commenced, the French firm Rothschild Frères contacted J.P. Morgan & Co. in New York to propose a $100 million loan, a significant portion of which would be allocated to purchase American goods. The sinking of the Lusitania was a calculated maneuver to push the U.S. toward war. Loaded with Morgan-owned ammunition, the ship was effectively conscripted into the British Navy. Despite explicit warnings from Germany, it was deliberately sent into a war zone to provoke an attack. American citizens aboard the ship were not informed of the impending danger by the State Department, even though the risks were well known. British naval forces, under orders from Winston Churchill, abandoned the Lusitania to its fate. Rothschild agent Colonel House was likely privy to the plan, as records suggest he discussed the scheme with Sir Edward Grey of England. Historian Colin Simpson described the Lusitania's sinking as the foulest act of willful murder ever committed on the seas. On the Axis side, the Rothschild network also extended financial support. The Warburg family, closely allied with the Rothschilds, played a significant role. Max Warburg, the brother of Paul Warburg of Kuhn, Loeb & Co., managed the family's banking empire in Frankfurt, Germany, and served as head of Germany's secret police during the war. The Warburgs reportedly funneled financial aid to the Axis powers. After the war, the Treaty of Versailles was shaped by individuals with Rothschild ties, including Paul and Max Warburg, Colonel House, Thomas Lamont of Morgan & Cobers, John Foster Dulles, and Alan Dulles, both of Kuhn, Loeb & Co. The treaty's harsh terms set the stage for World War II. As one delegate ominously stated, "This is no peace. This is only a truce for 20 years." Indeed, in 1939, the world plunged into another devastating war. The Versailles meetings also produced the elite's blueprint for the League of Nations, an early attempt at a global governance institution orchestrated by the Illuminati. Though the League of Nations failed, its failure inspired the creation of organizations like the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, and the Royal Institute of International Affairs. World War I also facilitated the establishment of a communist state. Max Warburg financed Lenin and his revolutionary efforts. Jacob Schiff provided Lenin with $20 million, while J.P. Morgan & Co. and Alfred de Rothschild also contributed to the Bolshevik Revolution. The Second World War was similarly influenced by Illuminati and Rothschild interests. The Great Depression, which affected both the United States and Europe, coupled with the punitive Versailles Treaty, stoked nationalist fervor in Germany. Adolf Hitler rose to prominence through his association with the most powerful occult secret society in Germany. Within this inner circle, satanic rituals were reportedly practiced. Hitler's mentor, Dietrich Eckart, claimed on his deathbed, "Follow Hitler. He will dance, but it is I who have called the tune. I have initiated him into the secret doctrine, opened his centers in vision, and given him the means to communicate with the powers. Do not mourn for me. I shall have influenced history more than any German." Speculation about Hitler's lineage suggests he may have had Rothschild ancestry, bolstered by the support of a satanic society and the financial backing of the Illuminati. Rising from obscurity, poverty, and imprisonment, Hitler's ascent to power is attributed to a combination of these forces. It is plausible to speculate that Hitler was entirely under the influence of demonic forces, having surrendered himself to Satan's control. This alignment with evil forces, coupled with the support of the Illuminati, allowed him to become one of history's most notorious figures. Possession by Satan and the role of the Illuminati. An ex-member of the satanic hierarchy within the Illuminati once shared a belief with me that throughout history, certain evil men have completely surrendered themselves to possession by Satan. These individuals, Hitler and Genghis Khan for example, were seen as anti-Christ figures, merely human vessels inhabited by a powerful demonic spirit, or even Satan himself. According to this former Illuminati insider, when Satan no longer required the body of his anti-Christ, he would discard it through death and seek out another willing soul to sacrifice bodily control to the devil. These figures, the informant explained, would not be the Antichrist per se, but would allow themselves to be taken over by the spirit of the Antichrist. Although this is just a theory, I believe it holds some merit. If true, it offers a fascinating perspective on Hitler and the ruling elite who enabled his rise. Hitler's primary source of economic power was the IG Farben chemical cartel, which was controlled by the Illuminati. This cartel was established through loans from Wall Street as part of what became known as the Dawes Plan. Historian Carol Quigley referred to the Dawes Plan as largely a J.P. Morgan production. The J.P. Morgan Group arranged the loans to IG Farben, effectively creating Hitler's economic foundation. Without the capital supplied by Wall Street, there would have been no IG Farben, and almost certainly no Adolf Hitler or World War II. In 1928, Henry Ford merged his German assets with IG Farben. The cartel developed the deadly Zyklon B gas used to exterminate Jews during the Holocaust. It was also implicated in horrific torture experiments that contributed to mind control techniques, including monarch programming. Do you see what happened? A Rothschild agent helped establish a cartel directly involved in the brutal persecution of the Jewish people. Yet, the family continues to maintain the illusion of unwavering support for their race. At the outset of World War II, Germany faced a significant disadvantage, a severe fuel shortage. However, the Illuminati resolved this issue by enabling Germany to produce synthetic fuels through the hydrogenation process, which converts coal into gasoline. This technology was discovered by IG Farben, but was not fully developed by the start of the war. IG Farben subsequently partnered with Rockefeller's Standard Oil, which completed the research, facilitating Germany's war efforts. Interestingly, IG Farben's plants were largely spared from Allied bombing raids. By the end of the war, the refineries had sustained only 15% damage. William Dodd, the American ambassador to Germany before World War II, wrote to President Roosevelt, "At the present moment, more than 100 American corporations have subsidiaries here or cooperative understandings. The DuPonts have allies in Germany aiding the armament industry, chief among them being the IG Farben Company. Standard Oil Company sent $2 million here in December of 1933 and has been making $500,000 annually, helping the Germans improve hydrogenation technology. The International Harvester Company reported a 33% increase in business here, although they could take no profits out except in goods. Even our airplane manufacturers have secret arrangements with Krupps. General Motors Company, controlled by the J.P. Morgan Group, and Ford do enormous business here through subsidiaries and take no profits out. Germany depended on the capital of these and many other American companies to wage war. IG Farben had a U.S. holding company called American IG Farben. Among its board of directors were Paul Warburg, his brother Max Warburg, head of Germany's secret police during World War I, and Warburg agent Hermann Metz. Other directors included prominent Rockefeller and international banking figures such as Edsel Ford, Charles Mitchell, and Walter Teagle. Following the war, 3 Germans on the Board of Governors were convicted as war criminals, but the elite Americans mentioned earlier were not, despite participating in the same criminal decisions. According to author Eustace Mullins, Hitler met with Allen Dulles and John Foster Dulles in 1933. The Dulles brothers and their role in financing Hitler. The Dulles brothers acted as legal representatives for Schiff and Warburg's Kuhn, Loeb & Coher, which was an integral part of the Rothschild network. According to Mullins, Kuhn, Loeb had extended large short-term credits to Germany and needed to ensure the repayment of these loans. The Dulles brothers allegedly assured Hitler that he would receive the necessary funds to become Chancellor of Germany, provided he promised to repay the debts. One of Germany's largest tank manufacturers was Opel, controlled by the J.P. Morgan Group. Another company linked to the J.P. Morgan Group was Bendix Aviation, which supplied Germany with data on automatic pilots, aircraft instruments, and aircraft and diesel engine starters. These examples are just a few among many. There is much more that could be written on this subject. The manufactured Pearl Harbor attack enabled Roosevelt to bring America into the war. The Second World War was effectively engineered by the Illuminati with the help of the Rothschild, Morgan, Warburg, and Schiff syndicate. After the war, the tribunals investigating Nazi war criminals censored any materials recording Western assistance to Hitler, as historian Anthony C. Sutton noted. Globalism and the creation of international institutions. World War II paved the way for American acceptance of a global peacekeeping institution, the United Nations. After the U.S. rejected the first attempt to create such a body with the League of Nations, the Illuminati sought to establish an arm of the Rothschild-funded Round Table groups to influence Western society toward embracing globalism. The original plan was to create an international special interest advisory group promoting a new world order called the Institute of International Affairs. However, the plan evolved, and the institute was divided into separate groups to influence different governments without appearing conspiratorial. These groups were formed at what became known as the Hotel Majestic meetings. Baron Edmond de Rothschild of France was the driving force behind these meetings, and all the founders of these groups had his approval. The chief figure among them was Rothschild agent Colonel Edward Mandell House. One such group was the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR. The CFR Handbook of 1936 explains its founding. On May 30, 1919, several leading members of the delegations to the Paris Peace Conference met at the Hotel Majestic in Paris to discuss setting up an international group to advise their respective governments on international affairs. It was decided at this meeting to call the proposed organization the Institute of International Affairs. At a meeting on June 5, 1919, the planners agreed it would be best to have separate organizations cooperating with each other. Consequently, they organized the Council on Foreign Relations, with headquarters in New York, and a sister organization, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, RIIA, in London, also known as the Chatham House Study Group, to advise the British government. A subsidiary organization, the Institute of Pacific Relations, was set up to deal exclusively with Far Eastern affairs and facilitated the Pearl Harbor attack. Other organizations were established in Paris and Hamburg. The Hamburg branch called the Institut für Auswärtige Politik, and the Paris branch known as the Centre d'études de politique étrangère. I have never seen detailed research on the Institut für Auswärtige Politik in Germany. It would be interesting to explore how this group was involved with the elite and the creation of World War II. A group of Illuminati strategists took the plans laid out at the Hotel Majestic meetings and formed the CFR. The founders included Colonel Edward Mandell House, a Rothschild agent, John Foster Dulles, of Rothschild-connected Kuhn, Loeb & Co., and Alan Dulles, also of Kuhn, Loeb & Co. The founding of the Council on Foreign Relations. The Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, was officially founded on July 29, 1921. Funding for its establishment came from prominent financiers such as J.P. Morgan, Bernard Baruch, Otto Kahn, Jacob Schiff, Paul Warburg, and John D. Rockefeller, among others. Meanwhile, the funding for the Royal Institute of International Affairs, RIIA, in London primarily originated from the Astor family. Rothschild-connected Paul Warburg was a member of the CFR's original board of directors. Rothschild influence in international affairs groups. It is clear that the Rothschild network exerted significant influence in the creation of these foreign relations organizations, a power that continues to this day. The Rothschilds' authority within the secret Society of the Elect and the Round Table groups extended into semi-public institutions such as the CFR and RIIA. The House of Rothschild, alongside their fellow elites, played a central role in managing the development of the New World Order. Should there be a Part 4 to this series, it will examine individual Rothschilds from the World War era through to the modern day, exploring their ongoing involvement with the Illuminati. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe and I'll see you in our next video.